If this individual is already in prison or incarcerated, to meet with them, typically you're going into a room in that facility and that door is locked behind you. And so you are usually one-on-one with that person. So the first thing I always tell people is you cannot be afraid. They will know if you're afraid of them.
Welcome to Hot Docket, the show where we talk about winning marketing strategies that have built the most successful law firms.
Join us every 2 weeks for the latest trends and tactics to grow your law firm. Welcome to the Hot Docket. Today we're at NTL in Miami, and we've got some special guests. We've got Tara Lee from MeanPug, and we've got Peter.
Hi, my name is Peter Scranton. My law firm is Bowen, Scranton Olsen. We do criminal defense, and at our core, all we really want to do is help people.
And today we've got a ton of interesting things to talk about. Can you give us a quick background on your firm and why you became an attorney?
Yeah, I started out majoring in philosophy and didn't know really what to do with that. So I went to law school at Ohio State. My mother was an attorney, so I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. But ultimately, after Ohio State law school, I went to the prosecutor's office, worked there for a while, and went into criminal defense.
You might be the only person I've heard not call it the Ohio State.
The Ohio State.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah, I don't particularly like that. Do you know the background of why they do that?
No, go through it quick.
All right. There's a school, Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. And so they are the Ohio State so that OU doesn't say the Ohio University.
That's too funny.
Yeah.
All right. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that background as a prosecutor and kind of how that shaped you today?
Oh, that's a good question. And honestly, when I was in law school, I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do. And I could have gone a lot of different ways, but it was just me applying to different jobs. And I got an intern position at the prosecutor's office in Columbus, Ohio. And I really enjoyed it. We had an intake division where people that the police didn't charge anyone could come in and talk to us directly. We could decide if we needed more evidence or if we wanted to charge them. We were able to try cases under the supervision of other lawyers. A lot of that is traffic, car accidents or a speeding ticket, but it could be anything else, a theft or domestic violence. So it's an excellent experience. When you work for the government, the prosecutor's office, the stakes are actually pretty low. People aren't paying you directly, so you're not as nervous about doing it, and you have help. And what I really liked about that group is, it was a large office, a lot of people, and we were all friends. So every lunch, you got to sit around and talk about work, cases, just anything. And just having that camaraderie was great. And from there, I never really changed. I've done a pretty general practice, landlord, tenant, domestic, but I've always done criminal. And now my practice is pretty much 95% criminal defense.
Could you walk us through a couple of the most common types of cases you handle?
For sure, the most common case we handle is what in Ohio is called operating a vehicle while impaired. A lot of places call them DUIs. But there's a reason that a private attorney gets those. The big one is somebody that gets an OVI is probably working, worried about their license. They're not a hardened criminal. They made a mistake. And so they're willing to pay some money to try to get back on the road, not lose their job, avoid points. And so they will hire private attorneys. And so that's a good one. They don't take long to resolve. They're usually pretty easy to resolve. There's a lot of different tricks you can use. So we get a lot of those. Probably the other one that's the most common, unfortunately, is domestic violence. And just because it's so prevalent. And you have a lot of spouses that end up with domestic violence, parents with their children. And it just happens a lot. And again, they're usually in a position where they can hire someone to help them.
So there's two trains of thought on... I've seen criminal defense firms either specialize and do only DUIs or only domestic assault or basically niche down into one or go more general. What is your general feeling on that? And how did you come to where you are today?
Well, I think some firms have decided if they market themselves as being niche, especially with DUIs or something else, that it will help market and those people will go to them assuming they're better. I want a better result. This person only does this, so I'm going to go there. Quite honestly, with me is, I just have such a soft heart. If somebody says, hey, Pete, I need you to help me with this, if they ask me twice, I'm going to say yes. And so that's, if it's a murder, if it's a traffic ticket, I'm going to do it.
So it's less even a financial decision.
It's not
more,
financial.
it's like completely you want to help people.
Yeah. You can ask anybody in my law firm. If you ask Pete twice, he'll say yes.
That's a good tagline.
Yeah. It's probably not a good thing. But yeah, I'm just a softie, especially because you can look at it from a legal point of view. Can I help this person? Is there an avenue to help this person? I really just view it as this person needs help, and I'm going to figure it out.
So what was the toughest double ask someone's asked you to help them with?
Oh, my gosh. Well, unfortunately for me, or maybe fortunately, I don't know, we get appointed cases, and there will be times where that's not a case you would want. You certainly wouldn't pick it, but the judges need someone to represent that person. So those are the cases that personally can be really hard. Obviously, the hardest thing for me is child rape. I mean, there's no part of me that understands that agrees with it, but they need representation. Someone needs to help them. You don't have to make sure their case is dismissed. You're just mitigating the best you can and making sure you're going through and that it's a fair process. But absolutely, child rape is the worst.
For cases that you're appointed to, what is the average duration that you have to handle that case for?
Yeah, and those typically last longer than a private case. But for an appointed case, the courts try to resolve those cases somewhere within 6 to 9 months, but they can absolutely last 3 or 4 years.
Well, that sounds pretty rough.
Yeah, that's a long
Absolutely.
time.
That's a big ask.
I mean, the way you feel when you're, like 25 versus 30 can be very different. So yeah, it's a long time to hold on to a case.
So Peter, you just talked about some like really heavy cases that you've been appointed. For other attorneys that are dealing with some really heavy cases, can you talk about how you balance that with your mental health? How do you take care of yourself?
Yeah, I think that's really important, and that's very difficult for young lawyers in general. And I'll tell you to start just an example of how this can go. If this individual is already in prison or incarcerated, to meet with them, typically you're going into a room in that facility, and that door is locked behind you. And so you are usually one-on-one with that person. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I always tell people is you cannot be afraid. They will know if you're afraid of them. So even if you're lying to yourself, you need to go in there and not be afraid of talking to them. And then you have to talk about something else. They know if you go in there and you start talking about case law or you highlighted something in a police report, that you're not really worried about them. You're just doing your job. And so I always ask them about sports, I ask them about their family, where they're from. 20 or 30 minutes later, I'll start talking about the case. You want to build a rapport with them. You want them to feel comfortable with you. And you want them to know that you care about them as a person. Even if you don't like their actions or agree with any of that, I always remind myself that's someone's daughter, that's someone's son. Maybe they have their own children. And those people care about them and want you to do a good job. So, I think that's a good trick for starting. In terms of compartmentalizing how you deal with that, you just got to set it down. You just cannot take it home with you. Unfortunately, it's a job. And so you do your job, you do it the best that you can, and then you stop. I always tell people that, like being in college or being in school, you could study forever. You could study 24 hours a day, and maybe it's not enough. You have to force yourself to stop. And the same with being an attorney. You could look at the case all day, but at some point you just have to decide, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. I did my best, and you let it go.
How many cases do you think a defense attorney can take at any given time, specifically for criminal defense?
And
do a good job representing the clients.
Oh man, that's a good question. We talk about this a lot at our firm because we represent a lot of people. I probably have about 250 clients right now, which seems like a lot. honestly, to do the absolute best you can for somebody, that's probably somebody that's retired and decides just to take a case at a time because you can dedicate all of your time to it. But there's two sides to that. If you have someone that's not handling a lot of cases, it's probably because not a lot of people want them. If you have somebody that's really, really busy, it's probably because they're really good. So you have both sides of that. And so, again, man, that's a tough question. I would say absolute best case scenario would be one case in the morning, one case in the afternoon, probably no more than 10 cases a week. But I think most defense attorneys handle a lot more than that.
And the biggest problem with that, too, is the better you are and the more cases that are coming in, the more process you have to build. And when you build process, it makes it less of like a, human touch and all the elements that you really care about that you were just talking about. So it's a really tough balancing act.
It is. And it's really hard to give that personal element to people, but you have to commit yourself to it. And so just as an example, at my law firm, which I don't think is very common, everyone always has my cell phone number, and that way I can text. So if I'm in the courtroom, if it's late at night or something, I don't have to answer the phone, but I'm communicating with them. So, that's really important. A big complaint you'll have from a lot of clients is, I tried to get in touch with this person and they just won't. They won't answer. They won't call me back. And, we just try to stay as communicative as possible with these people.
I think regardless of case type, that is probably the number one complaint clients have with attorneys is poor communication.
Yeah, you call a lawyer's office, the secretary answers the phone, and they'll say, is he here? And, they wait like 5 minutes. They're going back to ask. You want to take a phone call. Oh, no, they're out.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know what it is with lawyers, but they don't seem very interested in spending a lot of time with their clients. And clients, they just want to talk. I mean, a lot of it is venting, obviously, but they want that relationship.
So how do you currently do marketing for your firm? Where are your cases coming from? What percentage are referrals? Do you typically find the highest quality cases are coming from referrals, the internet? You tell us.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely 100%. The best cases you get are referrals. And I think that's because, let's say you called me and you said, Pete, I want you to handle this, but it's a divorce and I don't want to do it. I would send you to one person. I would say, hire this person. You're going to do it. And if somebody like that sends them directly to me, they're going to hire me because there's a trust factor. Or if their best friend got in trouble before and you help them, they're going to hire you.
How have you built out those referral relationships, like your network?
Well, for me, it's easy because, I have a lot of friends that are attorneys in my area and, all over, but mostly in Columbus. And if they're good to me and they send me clients, I'll send them back. If, they're saying nice things about us, then I'll send them back. And it's a group of friends more than anything.
Yeah.
Are there any like crazy cases or any cases that you're particularly proud of in general that you'd want to give the listeners, something to hear?
So many. I mean, there are so many cases. I'll start with this because sometimes you forget. But last week I got a text message from a client. It wasn't a super complicated case, but he just said, Pete, never forget that you change lives with your work. And he said, you helped me. Now I'm going to get a better job. Long-term effects of really caring about that person. And it doesn't have to be a big case to do that. For commercial drivers, not having points is a big deal for them. So there are a lot of ways that you can really affect people in a positive way. Those cases you feel really good about, man. If you have somebody you like that comes in and you help them, you feel really good. You do not feel good if there's somebody you don't like and you win. You don't leave that case feeling good. You feel resolved and you feel like you've done your job, but you certainly don't feel like you're not happy about it. In terms of absolute craziest cases, I mean, there's so many. I was talking to someone last night, and as I thought about it, I thought about this case. And it's really interesting in a lot of levels. It's probably not PG for children, But we had a circumstance where there was a really violent rape in Columbus, and it appeared as though someone had taken a rock to this woman's head. So she was unconscious, bleeding on the ground. It shattered her skull. They didn't think she would survive. And we represented the individual who was passed out right next to her. So obviously when the police came, it made sense to arrest that individual. Ultimately, they indicted him. He sat in jail for at least 2.5 years until we could have his jury trial. And then at the jury trial, she takes the stand and they say, hey, is the individual that raped you here? Which is just a standard question. And that individual sitting next to me at the table, they're easy to point out. And she said no. So we had spent 2.5 years with this person in jail, and they had, as far as I knew, never asked her to actually identify the defendant. So either she was so violently hurt she didn't remember, or it really wasn't him. He was adamant it wasn't him. But yeah, things like that, that's stranger than fiction. You can't really, you would think that would never happen, and it does. It happens a lot.
Wow, that's wild.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was at the jury trial. And so ultimately what happened in that case is you file a motion for Rule 29 or an oral motion when the prosecutor is done presenting their evidence. And the judge can make a direct finding. And in this case, she did. She Rule 29 the charges. That individual is shackled, typically in handcuffs, not always. But they unshackle them, and that individual walks out of the courtroom with you. And it's as crazy as that.
Is there anywhere that folks can find you? Do you have social media or website or anything you'd want to leave so people could get in touch with you?
Yeah, a lot of people find us on Google. Our law firm name is Bowen, Scranton, and Olsen. We have a Facebook page, and then obviously our website, which is bsodefense.com.
All right. Well, it was a pleasure having you here today.
Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us on the Hot Docket. We really appreciated it, and we've had a very interesting conversation.
It was a pleasure being here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's great meeting you, Peter. We'll enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Hot Docket. We're your hosts, Bobby and Andrew, founders of MeanPug, the marketing agency for ambitious law firms.
Have questions about marketing or anything we covered today? Email us at mark@meanpug.com. Be sure to subscribe to learn more. Until next time.